Thank you so much for watching. This is the third video in the series of the Secondo Passaggio Intensive. And I've been answering questions that I got from the survey that I issued a couple months ago now. And also just talking about the Secondo Passaggio and hoping to help people understand the importance of it and how we can learn to transit it successfully. The practice that I have for smoothing out the transition across the Secondo Passaggio is very, very deliberate and takes incredibly small steps forward, and it works it from the top and it works it from below. Now you can find these things throughout the channel. Exercises such as this. Help us to feel the difference between the two. FYI, if you're having trouble just establishing a cricothyroid dominant singing voice or head voice response, the sirens are really good for that. So you can always do a ooh and get a feel for what your head voice sounds like. That exercise is meant to show us, to show you, where the transition point is most comfortable. So like, listen to my voice. I'm gonna sing too far low and watch what happens. You. Not too big of a deal there. You. Still okay. You. That doesn't really work at all. Pulling our head voices down gets just as awkward as if we try to force our chest voices too high. So there I came down far too low with my head voice at the first pitch. We have to listen really, really carefully for that when we're practicing with these exercises. Equally, when we're singing scales that ascend, we have to listen for when we are getting into a straining territory. So if I sing with my chest voice, and I make no accommodations for expansion, so I'm not going to basically go on as if I want to belt. I'm not going to allow those cricothyroids to elongate the vocal fold. It's going to keep on getting more and more strident the farther I go. And I only just got to my Secondo Passaggio there. And if I kept on going, it would get increasingly strident. So the importance of making that transition, of allowing for elongation, makes it possible for us to keep on ascending up the scale and getting that in tune, more seamless tone quality to our voices as we ascend over the Secondo Passaggio. Scale-wise exercises, like I just sang, are what we have to work towards in order to get that kind of response. Doing intervals is great for getting the facility in line so that we can start making the transition, but we have to work towards scale-wise melodies, because that's where we really get that feeling of the gradual tipping point as we're making our way through the zona di passaggio, and we're tipping from thyroarytenoid dominant to cricothyroid dominant, and then we tip back as we come back through. And it's that gradual accommodation and the learning of that gradual accommodation that makes it possible for the transition to be smooth. We practice that very deliberately in a very precise fashion so that we can expect it and it becomes habit. And this is how we arrive at the point where we don't have to think about it as much as we would if we had not gone through this practice. That's another benefit I mentioned in the previous video about how this seems like an awful lot of practice. And it is. It's a very disciplined, very delineated structure that we have to go through and establish good phonation across the Secondo Passaggio. I should say, I created a program that is very, very delineated and is meant to help establish good phonation across the Secondo Passaggio. I will talk about that in the next video. But by going through that kind of a process, by getting all 5 cardinal vowels responding well as they approach the Secondo Passaggio from above and heading down, and then ultimately going back and forth across the Secondo Passaggio in a stepwise fashion, we then create new habits that we can rely upon without having to think about it so much. And once we establish those habits, if you get into trouble on stage, then your training can kick in and you can scan through and say, oh, this is what's happening here. I understand. I got it. But in general, instead of worrying about the high note, instead of trying to figure out how to get that note to sound right, instead of worrying about it being in tune, we rely on the habits that we have built by going through a really carefully delineated process that helps us to establish consistent, predictable, reliable phonation across the Secondo Passaggio that sounds consistent with the tone in our head voice. And as I mentioned, I've actually created just such a system, and I will talk about that in my next video, which is when, if you want to get involved, you can choose to do so. Thank you so much. It's really been fun to do this short little mini Secondo Passaggio intensive. These videos are going to stay here on YouTube, and you can watch them anytime and share them if you like. And if you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments section. But hopefully we'll see you in a couple of days with the next video, and we'll see you in the high note boot camp. Take really good care of your voices. We'll see you again. Take really good care of yourselves. Bye.